The judge read the verdict out loud. $6,874,000 in damages. Patricia Morrison didn't flinch. She just tilted her head, smiled that fake country club smile, and said, "People like you don't understand how neighborhoods work, Derek. The HOA makes the rules. Deeds don't mean a thing if we say otherwise." Everyone in that courtroom went quiet. Even the bailiff stopped moving. She'd said it again. The same line she threw at me 2 years earlier when I begged her to stop tearing down the fence my grandfather built in 1973. She'd laughed then, too. That moment, the smugness, the arrogance, it burned into my brain. Because I was the blue-collar nobody she thought would roll over and go broke before fighting back. She was wrong. The system she weaponized against me ended up burying her. And it all started with one line on one old piece of paper. My grandfather's deed. Here's what I did. My name's Derek Holloway. I'm 47 years old, divorced 5 years now. I make about $68,400 a year working as a diesel mechanic for Hendricks Heavy Equipment down in Clayton, Virginia. I drive a 2008 F-250 with 312,000 miles on it. She's loud, leaks a little oil, but she's mine. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,475 a month. And most days it feels like I'm working just to stay one paycheck ahead of disaster. My daughter Emma is 21, junior at Virginia Tech, studying civil engineering. My son Kyle is 19, doing community college before transferring next year. Between tuition and child support, that's another $1,900 a month out the door. Nothing special about me. Just another guy keeping engines alive so other people can get to work. Except for one thing. In April of 2019, when my uncle Robert Holloway passed, he left me something that changed my life. A 1.6-acre parcel tucked at the edge of the Lakewood Estates subdivision. He bought it in 1974 for $52,000, paid off by 1991. When he died, it was worth just over $850,000, according to the county appraisal from June 2019. There was no mortgage, no lien, no HOA fees. It was outside the association line. Private deed, clean as a whistle. At least, that's what I thought. When I first inherited my uncle's land, I didn't think much about it. It was just a patch of wooded property on the far edge of Lakewood Estates. A quiet neighborhood with nice houses, strict rules, and too many retired lawyers. I didn't live there. Never planned to. But my uncle's will said, keep it in the family, don't sell to developers. So, that's what I did. I visited the place maybe twice that summer. One gravel driveway, a small tool shed, and an old oak tree where he'd carved our family initials back in '82. That oak still stood tall, roots spreading right up to the HOA boundary marker. It was peaceful. Until the letters started. The first one came in August 2019, printed on fancy letterhead. Lakewood Estates Homeowners Association, compliance notice. It said I was being fined $150 for unapproved storage of equipment visible from the road. The thing is, I didn't live there. I hadn't stored a damn thing. When I called the number on the letter, a woman answered, Patricia Morrison, HOA president. She spoke like she was reading from a script. Mr. Holloway, this land falls under Lakewood Estates jurisdiction. You're required to maintain community standards. I told her politely that my property wasn't part of Lakewood Estates, that my uncle had bought it before the HOA even existed. She paused. Then she said, "That's an interesting interpretation. We'll review the deed." Click. That was my first real conversation with Patricia, and it set the tone for everything that came next. A week later, I got a second letter, then a third. Each one bigger fines, new accusations. Weeds above 12 inches, unapproved structure, failure to comply. By November 2019, the total fines had reached $2,775. I ignored them at first, figured it was an error that would sort itself out. But when I drove out there one weekend, I found two men in orange vests hammering a property under HOA maintenance review sign right into my uncle's fence post. I lost it. I told them to leave, showed them the county deed, tax bill, and the 1974 plat and map that clearly showed my property line ending 75 feet outside Lakewood's official boundary. They shrugged. "Talk to Patricia," one said. So I did. The next Monday, I showed up at the HOA office. Little brick building by the clubhouse, American flag out front, golf carts parked in the lot. Inside, Patricia sat behind a big oak desk like a queen on her throne. She was in her early 50s, sharp haircut, perfect posture, that community leader smile plastered on. I laid out the documents, the deed, the plat, the county assessor letter confirming the property's independence. She didn't even look down. She just said, "Mr. Holloway, our covenants were expanded in 1998 to include all adjacent parcels maintaining shared access roads. That includes yours." "That's not how property law works," I said. Her smile tightened. "Oh, you'll find the HOA has broad authority under Article 14, Section D. It's about maintaining harmony." Harmony. That was her favorite word. When I refused to sign a retroactive compliance acknowledgement, she leaned back and said the line that would come to haunt me for the next 2 years. "HOA rules trump property deeds, Mr. Holloway. Around here, we make the rules." A week later, I found out what she meant. Someone had bulldozed the east fence line. They tore down my uncle's oak, ripped it straight out of the ground. A part of me died that day. The HOA claimed it was routine maintenance of shared landscape boundaries. But it wasn't shared. It was mine. I filed a police report. Nothing. They called it a civil matter. Then I called the county zoning office, and they said, "You'll have to take it up with your HOA." They had no idea I wasn't even in it. And just like that, Patricia's words became prophecy. Because once she started rewriting boundaries and enforcing fake fines, everyone just went along with it. The banks, the county, even my insurance company, who suddenly refused to renew my policy because of community covenant violations. By March 2020, I was out $6,842 in legal consultations and had made zero progress. That's when I realized something important. Patricia wasn't just enforcing rules. She was running a private empire, and I'd just become her next target. So I stopped reacting, and I started documenting. Emails, letters, phone logs, every violation notice, every photo, every timestamp. I put it all in a folder I called War. Because I knew one day I'd need to prove she was lying. And when that day came, I wanted to make sure there'd be no way out for her. If you ever want to understand how someone like Patricia Morrison gets power, don't look at the title next to their name. Look at the fear in the people around them. By the time I crossed paths with her, Patricia had been HOA president for 11 years. Lakewood Estates wasn't a neighborhood. It was her personal kingdom. 372 homes, an annual budget of $1.4 million, and not a single contested election since 2010. She didn't live in the biggest house. She lived in the oldest one. White columns, ivy creeping up the porch, flag always at half-mast for reflection. She held book clubs for the wives, wine tastings for the retirees, and neighborhood improvement meetings that always ended in new fines. When I started digging, I learned she was a former paralegal for a local developer, Morrison and Cooper Development LLC, now dissolved. Her husband, Alan Morrison, still owned 3 construction companies that had contracts with the HOA for beautification. The numbers were public. $387,000 a year paid to preferred vendors, all of them tied to her family. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was printing money. Every neighbor I spoke to had a story. One guy, Tom Ellis, retired firefighter, got fined $450 for parking his trailer within view of the street. Another, Sharon Lopez, was threatened with foreclosure over a bird bath she didn't move fast enough. Everyone grumbled, but no one fought, because the HOA had a law firm on retainer, Kessler and Dunn, known statewide for burying homeowners in paper. Patricia's trick was simple. Drown people in process until they couldn't afford to breathe. Certified letters, motions, hearings. She'd file liens faster than most people could write checks. When I confronted her again that fall, I brought a copy of my uncle's original 1974 plat map, notarized and stamped by the county recorder's office. It clearly marked the boundary line. I figured that would end it. She looked at it for maybe 2 seconds. Then she smiled and said, "Mr. Holloway, that map predates our charter. Outdated documentation carries no weight under current community governance." I remember that exact phrase, current community governance. She said it like she was quoting scripture. When I pressed, she waved toward a corkboard behind her desk, a framed HOA covenant amendment dated 1998 with 3 signatures. Her name was one of them. I asked, "Where's the county stamp?" She said, "We didn't need one. The homeowners voted." That's when it hit me. They'd expanded their HOA boundaries illegally, just printed new maps, filed them in their office, and started acting like law enforcement. A few weeks later, my property tax bill changed. The county website now listed my parcel as within Lakewood Estates jurisdiction. Just like that. One line of text, and the world believed her version. I called the county clerk, showed my documentation. He said, if the HOA filed an annexation notice, we have to honor it until challenged in court. So that's what Patricia did. She weaponized paperwork. She knew most people would never have the time, money, or stubbornness to challenge it. But I did. I started keeping track of her moves, every flyer, every community update, every meeting minute. The HOA's annual reports showed more red flags than a parade. $184,000 spent on landscape adjustments, $72,000 on legal retention fees, and $29,500 for security enhancements. I found out those enhancements were just cameras she had installed at the neighborhood entrances, pointed outward, not inward, recording anyone approaching her property. She ruled through visibility and intimidation. If you parked wrong, she knew. If you skipped a meeting, she knew. If you disagreed with her on Facebook, she fined you for community defamation. One night in January 2020, I got an email from an anonymous HOA member. No name, no signature. Just one line. Check the parcel expansion map filed under Lakewood Annex C, page 57. When I pulled the file at the county records office, my jaw hit the floor. They'd added my land as part of a revised drainage easement, signed by Patricia Morrison, witnessed by her husband Alan Morrison, and notarized by a woman named Gina Valdez, who, as it turned out, was Patricia's in-law. The ink on that fake notarization wasn't even dry before she started billing me for HOA dues, $485 per quarter, retroactive to the date of annexation. Total due, $1,940. I went door to door trying to warn neighbors. Most wouldn't open the door. A few whispered, "She'll find out." That's when I realized Patricia didn't just control the HOA, she controlled the narrative. She had a local Facebook group called Lakewood Pride. Every week she posted cheerful updates, new playground, new lighting, beautification projects. Anyone who questioned her got banned or mocked publicly. And when I tried to comment, showing proof my property wasn't part of the HOA, my post vanished within minutes. Then came the final warning. A certified letter stamped in red. Final notice of non-compliance, imminent lien action. Total amount owed, $7,612. I stood there in my apartment holding that letter and I actually laughed because I finally understood her game. She didn't need to bulldoze me physically anymore. She was doing it on paper. And that's when I stopped seeing Patricia as a neighbor. I started seeing her as a criminal. But to prove it, I needed more than anger. I needed evidence, the kind that holds up in front of a judge, not just the court of public opinion. So I made a plan. Quiet, patient, methodical. If Patricia wanted a war of documents, I was going to give her one she couldn't control. By April of 2020, Patricia Morrison had already sent me 5 certified letters, 2 violation reports, and 1 notice of pending HOA lien. I'd filed each and every one in my folder, the one labeled War. Then one Friday morning, I came home from a double shift and found a bright orange foreclosure warning taped to my apartment door. Not my land, my apartment door. The notice read, "Due to unpaid community dues and accumulated fines totaling $9,842, the Lakewood Estates HOA intends to proceed with a claim of lien against parcel 22174A. Failure to remit payment may result in property seizure under Virginia Code 55-516. That was the moment everything stopped feeling like harassment. It was fraud, and it was personal. I called the number at the bottom of the notice, a law firm out of Richmond, Kessler and Dunn. Some intern picked up and said, "Yes, Mr. Holloway, we've been authorized by Lakewood Estates to pursue the lien." I told him they couldn't legally file one because I wasn't part of the HOA. He said, "If you believe that, you'll have an opportunity to contest it in arbitration." Arbitration. That word burned like acid, because in Virginia, HOA disputes can start in private arbitration before ever reaching a courtroom, which means Patricia got to pick the arena, and she picked one she already owned. That weekend, I drove to the property again, first time in months, and what I found broke me. The old fence my grandfather built, gone. The oak tree stump dug up and paved over. In its place, a brand new community walking path with a Lakewood Estates logo carved into a wooden post. They had literally built a public path across my land. Neighbors jogged by, waving politely, completely unaware they were trespassing. There was even a small pet waste station bolted into the soil where my uncle used to keep his tool bench. It was theft, disguised as landscaping. I took pictures, dozens, GPS coordinates, time-stamped videos. I uploaded everything to a cloud folder and emailed copies to myself. That night, I sat in my truck, staring at the deed again, the same one that said, "Parcel 22174A, privately held, unencumbered." And I thought about Patricia's words. HOA rules trump property deeds. That's when I made the decision. No more arguing with letters, no more phone calls. If she wanted a legal fight, I'd give her one she couldn't control. I called an attorney the next morning, a quiet, soft-spoken guy named Michael Dorsey, who handled land disputes out of Fairfax County. I told him everything, showed him the letters, the photos, the fake annexation documents. He listened for 20 minutes, then leaned back in his chair and said, "Mr. Holloway, what they've done isn't just civil harassment, it's title fraud, and that's a felony." That was the first time anyone had said that word, fraud. And once I heard it, something inside me clicked, because if Patricia wanted to play queen, it was time she finally met the law.
Michael Dorsey wasn't what I expected. No fancy suit, no slick talk, just a man in his mid-50s with a stack of case folders and a quiet kind of confidence that made you feel like the room was finally balanced again. He listened, took notes, and then said something that changed the way I saw everything. "You can't win this in their arena, Derek. You win it in yours." He explained that HOAs love arbitration because it's private, controlled, and hard to appeal. But if we could prove the HOA falsified boundaries or filed false liens, we could skip arbitration entirely and go straight to civil court. That was the plan. We weren't going to fight the HOA. We were going to expose them. We started by pulling every public record we could find.
Plat maps, tax filings, annual reports, board meeting minutes, everything Patricia had signed in the last decade. Michael brought in a forensic surveyor, a guy named Graham Lee, who specialized in land disputes. Graham spent 2 days on site with drones, GPS, and the old 1974 survey my uncle had kept. When he was done, he sent me a simple one-page statement. The parcel identified as 22-174-9A remains outside Lakewood Estates boundary by 72.8 feet. No record of annexation exists in the county archives. That was our smoking gun. If the county never recorded the annexation, Patricia's entire legal foundation was built on fiction. Meanwhile, Michael filed a Freedom of Information Act request to the county clerk's office. We wanted every HOA filing Patricia had submitted since 1998. 3 weeks later, we got a thick envelope. Inside were handwritten meeting minutes, several notarized amendments, and one suspicious map, the same one the anonymous email had warned me about. The notary signature belonged to Gina Valdez. Michael ran her name through state records. She wasn't a notary when that document was signed. Her license had expired 2 years earlier. That meant the entire annexation document was legally void. We didn't tell Patricia. We let her keep digging. Every time she sent another fine, Michael documented it. Every notice, every threat, all part of the pattern. By June, we'd built a file thicker than a phone book. Then, we started flipping her own allies. Michael quietly reached out to a few HOA board members, the ones who'd been bullied or ignored for years. 2 of them agreed to talk under confidentiality. One, a retired CPA named Martha Jenkins, told us Patricia often approved expenses verbally and kept private bank transfers for administrative convenience. We subpoenaed the HOA's financial records. Turns out $184,000 of HOA funds had gone directly into accounts linked to Patricia's husband's company. That's not mismanagement, that's embezzlement. By July 2020, we had everything. Proof the annexation was forged, proof the notary was fake, proof the money trail led straight to Patricia's family. Michael smiled for the first time since I met him. He said, "It's time to stop collecting. Time to strike." We filed a civil complaint for property fraud, falsified lien, and intentional infliction of financial harm. And when the process server handed Patricia Morrison those papers in front of her HOA meeting, every single neighbor saw it. For the first time in 11 years, the Queen of Lakewood Estates didn't have a script to read from. Once we filed the complaint, everything changed. Suddenly, the quiet, polished world Patricia had built started cracking. The first thing we did was serve the HOA's board and Morrison herself. I watched from my truck as the process server handed the envelope to her assistant, who froze. Not Patricia, her assistant. That's when I realized Patricia had insulated herself so well that most of her team had never seen her handle anything real. Within days, the first subpoenas went out. HOA bank records, meeting minutes from 2015 to 2020, emails, letters, and invoices tied to every alleged annexation or lien. Her empire relied on paperwork, and now her paperwork was about to betray her. Michael and I spent hours in the county records office cross-referencing my grandfather's deeds with every HOA filing. Every document we found added another nail to Patricia's coffin. May 18, 2018, HOA meeting minutes approving parcel expansion, signed by board members who weren't even present. June 3, 2019, certified letters threatening fines on properties that weren't part of the HOA. December 11, 2019, bank transfer of $47,750 from HOA account to Alan Morrison's construction firm for landscape improvements. I remember looking at Michael, exhausted, hand shaking, and saying, "They're lying. They know it's wrong. They're just counting on me giving up." He nodded. "Let them wait. Every day they operate without legal right increases your damages." Next, we focused on emails.
I didn't even know Patricia had sent hundreds of them, CCing herself, her husband, and her top associates. Some were routine, others damning. One from July 2020 discussed my property explicitly. The Holloway parcel is outside the HOA boundary. The property owner probably won't notice until we finalize the path. If challenged, we can claim reliance on GIS maps. Michael leaned back and chuckled softly. Derek, this is gold. They knew. I felt my hand shake, not from fear, but from relief. We weren't imagining it. Patricia had gambled on my ignorance. We also deposed the notary, Gina Valdez. Her testimony collapsed in 5 minutes. She admitted her notary license had expired in 2018. Every annexation amendment she had notarized was legally void. Then came the financial audit. I'll never forget the day we walked into her CPA's office. Morrison Holdings transferred $184,000 of HOA funds to private accounts, the auditor said. My stomach dropped. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. I whispered, "They're stealing money." Michael smiled. "Technically, you're not whispering. You're declaring war." Finally, we leveraged community testimony. Neighbors came forward voluntarily, recalling fines, threats, and intimidation. "She told me if I spoke, my house would be next," said retired firefighter Tom Ellis. "I paid $450 just for parking my trailer where it had always been," whispered Sharon Lopez. Every story, every name, every receipt became a weapon. By August 2020, Patricia's carefully curated empire looked like a house of cards. And the best part, she didn't even know it yet. Every letter, every fine, every fraudulent annexation she had issued, now documented, time-stamped, and ready for court. Look, here's the thing. Patience is power. The longer Patricia acted, the more evidence stacked against her. We didn't need to rush. We just documented, cross-referenced, and waited. Because in her world, money and fear were the rules. In mine, proof was the weapon. And by the time we were ready to move, Patricia Morrison didn't just face one angry homeowner. She faced an army of facts, and the law on my side.
Incident 1. Legal harassment. Date, March 8th, 2022. I opened my mailbox that morning and froze. A thick envelope, Morrison Holdings, LLC, stamped on it. Inside, a cease and desist letter demanding $15,000 for alleged unauthorized property entry. I stared at it in my kitchen. Hands shaking, I counted my savings. $6,400 left after paying Michael's retainer. I couldn't believe this. "You think you can just take our land?" the letter sneered. "People like you don't understand property law." I almost dropped it. Michael said calmly over the phone, "Keep it. It's proof of bad faith." But that night, I couldn't eat dinner. Every bite stuck in my throat. I sat on the couch staring at the ceiling, my stomach knotting. I felt like giving up. Still, Michael reminded me, every day they operate unlawfully adds damages. Let them dig their own hole. So I documented everything. Photos, timestamps, copies of the letter. Even though my hands were shaking, I knew this was the first step to winning. Cost, zero financial, huge psychological toll. Incident 2. Fake code enforcement. Date, April 3rd, 2022, 7:15 a.m., Sunday. A knock at the door woke me. "Good morning, sir. I'm Inspector Daniels. We received a complaint about unsafe structures on your property." I blinked. My apartment. My property. He spent 3 hours inspecting, measuring, taking notes. By the time he left, I'd lost a day of work. Monday morning, my boss, Ray, pulled me aside. "Derek, there's a warning in your file about reliability." I called the county planning office. They confirmed. The complaint was filed by Morrison Holdings, LLC. They had weaponized local government to intimidate me. Cost, lost 3 hours work, written warning, stress off the charts, hands shaking, stomach tight, couldn't focus on the truck engines at work. Incident social media attack. Date, May 17th, 2022, 2:47 p.m. I was checking Facebook when my daughter Emma called crying. "Dad, people are saying horrible things. They called you a scammer, a con artist." Someone in the local 4,200 member group had posted defamatory lies about me. 387 shares, 46 comments. My face went pale, hands shaking. I stopped going to the grocery store in that county for 9 days. Michael said, "Screenshots, document everything. This will work in your favor later." Cost, emotional trauma, social isolation. My daughter sobbing on the phone broke my heart. Incident 4, job harassment. Date, June 22nd, 2022. I got a call from my boss. "You're on unpaid administrative leave, 4 days. State Contractors Board flagged your account." I'd been working overtime, 60 hours a week, lost $1,140 in wages, paid $800 to clear my name. Performance review hit. Reliability issues. Michael advised, "Keep every letter. This goes into the harassment record." My BP was creeping up, hands shaking. The night before, I barely slept, worried about bills. Incident 5, PI following kids. Date, August 9th, 2022, 11:47 p.m. My son Kyle called. "Dad, gray Nissan, parked outside, 3 days." I drove 2 hours through the night, heart pounding. License plate, JMK 4773. Sentinel Investigations, LLC. They followed Kyle 11 days, Emma 6 days. Cost, $340 gas checking in on them. Kyle said, "Maybe you should drop it, Dad." I couldn't. My stomach twisted. My son was afraid to leave his apartment. It broke me. Incident 6, IRS audit. Date, September 15th, 2022. I got a full audit letter, 2019 to 2021 returns. Had to hire accountant, $3,500 retainer. Total, $7,800. Put it on credit card at 18.9 APR. 4 months later, nothing owed. Credit card debt, $11,300, $215 per month in interest. BP, 147/92. Weight loss, 14 pounds. Doctor prescribed meds, $87 a month. Michael said, "Document everything. They'll think twice next time." Incident vandalism. Date, 1, November 3rd, 2022. Scammer, spray painted on my truck, $1,150 to fix. Date 2, December 18th, 2022. Truck keyed both sides, $2,340 repair. I parked different places every day, constantly looking over my shoulder. Sleep shattered. BP 147/92. Weight loss 14 pounds. Incident break-in. Date February 2nd, 2023, 11:43 p.m. Door unlocked when I returned. Note on the kitchen table. Drop the lawsuit or things get worse. No fingerprints. Stayed with Emma 2 weeks. "Maybe you should drop it. Not worth your life," she said. I was 47 years old, on my daughter's couch, terrified, exhausted, but I couldn't stop. Cumulative effects. Harassment costs, $18,000 plus. Credit card debt, $11,300 at 18.9 APR. Blood pressure, 147/92. Weight loss, 14 pounds. Sleep disruption, waking at 2 a.m. Work, lost overtime, written warnings. Doubts, almost quit 2 or 3 times. Family begged, "Not worth it, Dad." It was March 7th, 2023. I'd been poring over 14,000 pages of discovery with Michael's paralegal, Jennifer. My kitchen table was buried with documents, printouts, and sticky notes. I'd been on edge for weeks, heart pounding every time I saw another Morrison signature. Then, Jennifer said quietly, "Derek, you need to see this." Page 8847. I picked up the document, squinting at the screen. It was an email chain from July 2020. Email 1, July 12, 2020, 9:47 a.m. From Patricia Morrison. 2, Kenneth Briggs, surveyor. "Kenneth, I'm looking at the GIS maps and I think the Holloway building might actually be on a separate parcel. Can you double-check the legal descriptions before we finalize the site plan? I don't want any issues down the road. P." Email 2, July 14th, 2020, 2:15 p.m. From Kenneth Briggs to Patricia Morrison. Patricia, you're right. The Holloway Building, 847 Industrial Boulevard, is parcel 084733-1956, separate from our parcel. But honestly, the building looks abandoned, and the GIS map discrepancies make it easy to claim it's part of our site. The owner probably won't notice until we're done building. By then, it's easier to settle than fight. Your call, K. Email 3, July 14th, 2020, 2:22 p.m. From Patricia Morrison to Kenneth Briggs. Let's move forward as planned. If anyone asks, we relied on the GIS maps in good faith. Don't mention this email chain to anyone. P. My stomach dropped, hands shaking. I felt my knees go weak. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was losing my mind. I called Michael immediately. Derek, we got them. They knew. They absolutely knew. This is beautiful. I sank into my chair, frozen. Relief, vindication, rage, all at once. This is fraud, conspiracy, premeditation. They're done. For the first time since this nightmare began, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the sheer power of truth. Every late night, every photo, every receipt, all of it had led here. Jennifer leaned over, smiling faintly. Derek, mark this. This is the evidence that ends it. I stared at the email chain again. Patricia Morrison had gambled on my ignorance. She had demolished my property, intimidated my family, and lied under the assumption I'd never fight back. But she didn't count on the receipts culture my grandfather instilled in me. She didn't count on patience. She didn't count on the law. And now her entire empire was about to unravel because of 3 emails, a filing cabinet, and a diesel mechanic who refused to quit.
It was September 11, 2023, Clayton County Circuit Court. Judge Harold Brennan, 67, with 31 years on the bench, was known for no tolerance of BS. The courtroom had 80 seats, packed, with dozens standing in the back. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. My kids, Emma and Kyle, were there with me. I wore a gray J.C. Penney suit for my grandfather's funeral. Work boots. Couldn't afford dress shoes. Martin Dorsey laid out the evidence. Deeds from March 17, 1973 and April 3, 2019. Tax records from 1973 present. Timeline of harassment. Photos of demolished building. County permits showing Patricia built on wrong parcel. Patricia Morrison entered. Calm, rehearsed, perfect. Armani suit, Cartier watch worth $18,500. Defense opening. Honest mistake, relied on professionals, no malicious intent. Day 1, opening. Martin began. Your Honor, this isn't just a boundary dispute. This is a working-class man's property destroyed by someone with resources, connections, and deliberate intent. Here's the evidence. Slides. Photos of my demolished 12,000-square-foot commercial building. County permits showing Morrison built self-storage units over my land. The courtroom murmured. Patricia's eyes flicked, but her face stayed calm. Day 2. Plaintiffs testify. I took the stand. Hands shaking. Heart pounding. My name is Derek Holloway. I worked 43 years in diesel and plumbing with my grandfather. He bought this building in 1973 for $67,000 and paid it off in 1988. Most honest man I knew. I held a photo of him in his workshop. He said, keep your receipts, all of them. You never know when you'll need to prove you're right. That filing cabinet saved this case. I detailed the harassment. Private investigator following Kyle 11 days, Emma 6 days. Social media attacks calling me a scammer. IRS audit, $11,300 debt at 18.9% APR. Vandalism and break-in threats. My voice broke. They followed my 20-year-old son for 11 days. He was afraid to leave his apartment. Cross-examination tried to paint me as unreasonable. I said, after they demolished my building and terrorized my family, yes, I rejected $1.2 million. This isn't about money, it's about justice. Day 2, 3, expert witnesses. Dr. Michael Torres, surveyor. There's no reasonable way to mistake parcels. This wasn't error. It was negligence or fraud. Appraiser Sandra Yang. Original building, $915,000. Improvements, $2.9 million. Under Virginia law, improvements belong to landowner. County GIS coordinator. Morrison looked up parcel info 16 times between June and September 2020. They knew which parcel belonged to Holloway. Day 3. Antagonists testify. Patricia Morrison took the stand 9:30 a.m. Calm, rehearsed, perfect. Thornton walked through good faith defense. Martin cross-examined. Miss Morrison, do you recognize this email dated July 12, 2020? Her face changed. I need to review it, she whispered. On screen, the email chained to her surveyor. The Holloway building might be on separate parcel. Judge silent. Martin read next email. The owner probably won't notice until we're done building. By then, easier to settle than fight. The courtroom erupted. Judge Brennan, order. Martin pressed. You gambled that a diesel mechanic wouldn't notice or couldn't fight back. Isn't that what you did? Patricia, we made a business decision. Martin, you made a criminal decision. Gallery gasped. Whispered conversations filled the room. Day 4, verdict. Judge Brennan's voice carried. The evidence demonstrates calculated disregard for property rights that shocks the conscience of this court. The defendant, Patricia Morrison, knowingly and intentionally trespassed, demolished, and built on property belonging to Derek Holloway. This was not an error. This was theft. Harassment details recounted. False complaints, social media attacks, IRS audit, PIs following children, break-ins. Damages awarded. $915,000, demolished building fair market value. $2.9 million improvements. $312,000 rental income. $847,392 legal fees and harassment costs. $2.3 million punitive damages. Total, $6,874,392. Offered $6.4 million for no appeal. Defendant has 60 seconds. Thornton whispered to Patricia. She nodded. Your Honor, we accept. $6.4 million, no appeal. Judge Brennan continued. Miss Morrison, you didn't lose because of technicality. You lost because you committed fraud. Poverty did not make him powerless. You were wrong. I am referring this to the FBI for wire and mail fraud. Virginia State Bar will investigate Mr. Pierce. DPOR will investigate Mr. Briggs for license revocation. Emma cried, hugging me. The gallery erupted in applause. The judge gave her 90 days to pay. Patricia Morrison started liquidating assets immediately. She listed 12 properties, sold her Range Rover, even put her $2.8 million house on the market. Morrison Holdings couldn't pay. Then, November 27, 2023, 2:47 a.m., my apartment alarm went off, the one I'd installed after the first break-in. I wasn't home. I was at Emma's. Security cameras showed Patricia Morrison picking my lock. I called 911. Police arrived 2:55 a.m. and arrested her. Charges: breaking and entering, attempted burglary, restraining order violation. She was released on $50,000 bail. Criminal charges meant jail time was now a real possibility. Thornton quit immediately, abandoning her defense. Her confidence shattered. I sat on Emma's couch, hands still shaking. She's escalating, Michael said calmly. Good. It proves her desperation. Keep documenting. This move cemented what we already knew. Patricia Morrison had crossed every line, legally and morally. She gambled that fear and intimidation would make me quit. She was wrong. I hadn't just won in court. Her own actions confirmed the judgment. She was finally cornered, exposed, and powerless. And in that moment, I felt a strange calm. The battle wasn't over, financially. But morally, I had already won.
By December 18, 2023, Morrison Holdings filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They couldn't pay the $6.4 million judgment. 96 residential rental families were terrified. Some had lived in their apartments for over 6 years, kids in school 2 blocks away. Others were on fixed incomes. The bankruptcy court scheduled an online auction, January 9, 2024, starting bid $500,000 for all 284 properties. 12 bidders were registered. I watched from my 2008 F-250, 327,000 miles, hands shaking. Bidding started, $500K to $750K to $1.1 million to $1.4 million to $1.7 million to $1.85 million. I paused, heart racing. Finally, I entered $1.9 million. It won. Court applied my $6.4 million judgment, paid $1.9 million to buy the properties. Patricia personally owed $4.5 million. Her personal bankruptcy followed January 23, 2024. She lost her house, $2.1 million sold to creditors, car, and career. She moved into a rental apartment in Richmond for $1,450 a month and took a property manager job, $55,000 a year. I now owned Morrison Holdings, LLC, all 284 properties, all contracts and assets, self-storage facility on my original land. I didn't take pleasure in it, but I didn't feel bad either. I'd turned decades of harassment, lies, and intimidation into justice and opportunity. The tenants? I hadn't forgotten them. I read the letters. Sarah Chen, nurse with 2 kids. Please don't evict us. We can't afford to move. George Pritchard, 78, Vietnam vet. This duplex is the first place I felt safe in 50 years. Maria Rodriguez, escaped abuse, 4-year-old son. This is our fresh start. We have nowhere else to go. I knew I couldn't profit by displacing them. Instead, I set up trust funds, ensuring 96 families kept their homes, no rent increases, option to rent to own at 0% interest over 15 years. Rent becomes mortgage. You stay in your home. 96 families listened, stunned. The trust handles management, maintenance, and repairs. Properties never sold to investors. Jennifer Park, mother of 2. You're giving us chance to own homes. My parents rented their whole lives. You're giving my kids a future. Sarah's 7-year-old daughter handed me a drawing. Stick figure house with family inside. That's our house. Thank you for not taking it. Room erupted in applause. People wept. People cheered. The trust ensured 73 families eventually own their homes through rent-to-own. 23 families continue month-to-month rent. News spread fast. Local paper. Diesel mechanic wins $6.4 million. Uses money to help tenants become homeowners. Washington Post, NPR picked it up. Richmond TV did a 10-minute segment. Won regional Emmy September 2024. I didn't attend any of the news events. I was working. I still drive my 2008 F-250, still fix engines at Hendricks Heavy Equipment 4 days a week. But now, my grandfather's lessons are honored. Keep receipts, fight for what's right, help those who can't fight for themselves. Kids see the impact too. Emma graduated May 2024, civil engineer, $68,000 a year. Kyle finished December 2024, software developer, $72,000 a year, dating Ashley. 96 families now have security, hope, and a future. Every stick figure house, every thank you letter, every tear in that town hall reminds me, this isn't just victory over Patricia Morrison, it's victory over greed, intimidation, and injustice. And best of all, it's a legacy my grandfather would be proud of.
I kept 5 acres of the original 31-acre parcel. Built a 1,400 square foot cabin. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Cost $240,000. Modest. No granite counters, no heated floors. I moved in July 4, 2024. Kyle teased, "Could have built a mansion, Dad." I laughed. I don't need a mansion. I need a place to sleep and keep my grandfather's filing cabinet. I still work as a diesel mechanic at Hendricks Heavy Equipment, 4 days a week. Boss Ray shook his head. "You're a millionaire. Don't have to work." "I like fixing engines. I like the guys here," I said. I review properties on Fridays. Water heaters, dishwashers, small repairs. Nothing glamorous, but tenants stop by, smile, wave. Sarah invited me to her daughter's birthday. George gives vegetables from his garden. Maria sends Christmas cards. Son drew me as a superhero. I established the Robert Holloway Memorial Scholarship. $500,000 fund, $10,000 per student, for trade school or college. First 12 students started September 2024. Madison Torres, plumber's daughter, wants to be a welder. This means I don't choose between school and helping mom pay rent. Changes my life. My family is stronger too. Emma graduated May 2024, civil engineer, $68,000 a year. Kyle finished December 2024, software developer, $72,000 a year, dating Ashley. Sunday phone calls are sacred. Relationships rebuilt, strengthened. Displayed in the cabin, framed original deed, March 17th, 1973. Kyle's fishing drawing from age 7. Stick figure house from Sarah's daughter. Card signed by all 96 families. Because of you, our children will grow up in homes they've always known. You gave us security, hope, future. We will never forget. My grandfather's filing cabinet, still intact. Of the 96 families, 73 chose rent to own, 23 rent month to month. In 15 years, 73 families will own homes. Sarah's kids will own the house they grew up in. George will own his duplex. Maria's son will grow up in a home he truly owns. That's worth more than $6.4 million, I told Kyle and Emma. Life is modest, steady, and meaningful. I drive the same 2008 F-250, now 327,000 miles. I still fix engines, still help people, still honor my grandfather's lessons. Keep receipts, fight for what's right, help those who can't fight for themselves. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had someone try to take something from you because they thought you were too small to fight back? Have you ever been underestimated because of your job, your income, or the truck you drive? Have you ever had to stand up against someone with more money, more power, more connections than you? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories about underdogs who refuse to quit. And remember this, keep your receipts, all of them, every single one. You never know when that piece of paper might be worth $6.4 million someday. Or more importantly, it might be worth your dignity, your home, and your family's future. My grandfather kept receipts for 50 years. They saved everything. They proved everything. They won everything. Keep fighting. Keep documenting. And never let anyone tell you that people like you don't belong.